deep within the institutional geometry of the National Archives Annex, where the structure itself is an intentional barrier against both time and intrusion, lies the heart of quiescent history. This is not the section where tourist groups shuffle past gilded declarations. This is the sublevel complex built primarily of reinforced concrete, cooled perpetually to a stable 55 degrees Fahrenheit, designed to withstand geophysical trauma. The corridors here do not echo with the casual footfalls of researchers, but absorb sound into their heavy silence, reflecting only the low, consistent hum of high-efficiency air filtration systems. It is in this silent weight of archived secrecy that the documents labeled Tier 0 Access reside. Files so sensitive that their contents fundamentally reshape strategic doctrine without ever once approaching the periphery of public awareness. These files detail 5 specific briefings, each presented during moments of global instability or sudden scientific reckoning, altering the trajectories of national planning across economic, defense, and existential domains. They are the moments when the highest echelons of government were handed reality stripped bare, forcing decisions based on information too destabilizing to share. To view these records is to witness the operational reality of the world as distinct from the consensual narrative presented to the population. The first of these pivotal moments concerned a sudden, shocking intrusion into the silence of deep space, detailed in the file designated the Obsidian Signal. The origins of this data trace back to a remote monitoring station situated high on the crags of the Alaskan northern slope, a facility secured by razor wire fences coated in thick crystalline rime that fractured silently under the biting wind. The station itself was a low-slung, heavily insulated bunker, its only visible connection to the outside world being the massive, slowly articulating radio dishes aimed at the celestial dark. Inside, the atmosphere was thick with the scent of ozone and heated electronics, dominated by the rhythmic, steady click of analog recording equipment. It was within this isolated shell that the anomalous pulse was logged. The signal was unique, a burst of energy measured across a wide spectrum of frequencies, characterized by an astonishing brevity and an utter lack of periodicity. It was not a repeating beacon, nor a structured message. It was a singular, powerful exhalation of energy. The technicians, bundled in heavy thermal gear and accustomed to the predictable noise of the void, initially dismissed the spike as localized interference. However, the subsequent analysis, conducted over a frenetic 72-hour period under heightened security, confirmed its extraterrestrial nature and its staggering power. The origin point was definitively plotted far beyond the orbit of Neptune, past the swirling, icy debris of the Kuiper Belt, placing it deep in the unexplored reaches of the solar environment. The recording was captured primarily on brittle magnetic tapes, spooling on ancient, reliable hardware designated under the operational cover name Project Chimera. The tapes themselves became priceless relics of immediate concern, extracted from the station under military escort, and delivered to a sterile, deep underground laboratory facility where physicists and cryptographers worked under constant pressure. The briefing presented to the governing body was stark. The energy pulse defied all known theoretical propulsion or communication models. It indicated an operational capability vastly exceeding anything conceived of within terrestrial physics. And perhaps more importantly, its non-repeating nature suggested either a one-time failure event or an observation logged and then instantly discarded. The resulting strategic overhaul was immediate and complete, conducted entirely in secret. Deep space communications protocols were scrapped and redesigned. New satellite constellations were secretly authorized, equipped with proprietary receivers designed to look not for structured, repeating signals, but for powerful, momentary disruptions. The entire philosophy governing interstellar search was quietly shifted from passive listening to hyper-vigilant monitoring of catastrophic energy transfer. This shift, driven entirely by the obsidian signal, consumed trillions in undisclosed funding, forcing the redirection of resources from visible domestic programs into the silent, cold architecture of deep space vigilance. The public narrative remained focused on minor orbital defense mechanisms, while the reality was a complete, undisclosed preparation for an encounter rooted in overwhelming energy disparity. The realization that something profoundly powerful existed just beyond the threshold of the solar system, capable of projecting energy far exceeding stellar output, fundamentally altered the national defense posture from terrestrial conflict preparedness to existential deep domain observation. The silence that followed the briefing was not calm, but the ringing silence of newly recognized vulnerability. The second critical briefing focused squarely on terrestrial vulnerability, shifting the lens from the vastness of space to the immediate, grinding necessity of resources. Global resource exigency. This presentation occurred not in a high-tech command center, but in a sterile, windowless briefing room. The atmosphere deliberately purged of ambient noise and human warmth. Filtered sunlight barely penetrated the heavy, tightly drawn drapes that lined the upper wall, casting the long, polished mahogany table in a perpetual dim amber glow. The air was dry, conditioned to scientific precision, smelling faintly of ozone and fresh printer toner. The subject was the critical scarcity of strategic rare earth minerals. These elements, ranging from neodymium essential for high-efficiency magnets to indium vital for touchscreens and advanced circuits, are the silent foundations of every modern military and consumer technology. The briefing was presented by a team of geologists and economic modelers whose charts glowed ominously on the large projection screens. The data was unequivocal and brutal. Global consumption rates, coupled with the concentrated geopolitical distribution of recoverable ores, were on a direct collision course with depletion. The models mapped the critical point, not in generations, but in the near future, specifically for those minerals integral to next-generation defense systems and computational supremacy. The truly classified element of the briefing lay not in the scarcity itself, which was broadly understood in academic circles, but in the detailed exposition of secret transnational covenants. The analysts revealed meticulously constructed agreements solidified under layers of complex shell corporations and quiet diplomatic memorandums, which ensured strategic mineral dominance for a select few nations. These covenants had been meticulously established over decades, designed to lock down extraction rights and processing facilities well past the projected depletion dates of rival reserves. The presentation included chillingly precise data on mineral stockpiling, hidden reserves quantified down to the ton, proving that certain international actors were not merely managing scarcity, but actively accelerating the dependence of others. The briefing triggered an immediate and necessary adoption of clandestine economic warfare strategies. The immediate goal was survival, breaking the stranglehold of the covenants without resorting to overt military action. This necessitated the covert manipulation of global commodity markets, the funding of exploratory geological surveys in politically unstable regions, and the deployment of sophisticated financial intelligence teams focused solely on mapping and disrupting the mineral supply chains of rivals. Sensory details of this meeting centered on the quiet, grim acceptance around the table, the soft scratching of official pens on specialized notepaper, the low, grave voices of officials confirming immense, silent budgets allocated to destabilization campaigns. The atmosphere was one of calculated desperation, recognizing that future industrial power, and thus future national security, would be determined by who controlled the few tons of metallic dust remaining in the Earth's crust. The outcome of the meeting ensured that every major diplomatic and trade decision moving forward was layered over a foundation of mineral exigency. A desperate, silent war for resources that the public was told was merely market correction or supply chain adjustment. The third confidential file outlined a decades-long secret that was abruptly resolved with unforeseen consequences: the unregistered flight. This document detailed the hazardous recovery operation concerning an experimental reconnaissance aircraft that had vanished without a trace during a high-altitude test flight decades prior. The incident occurred over a remote, unpopulated island chain, an archipelago perpetually shrouded in coastal fog and ravaged by salt-laden gales. The islands themselves were composed of sharp, igneous rock, the air heavy with the metallic tang of oxidation and the ceaseless crashing of gray ocean waves. The aircraft, known internally only by its design classification, had utilized a highly advanced prototype propulsion system that defied conventional fuel sources. Its disappearance triggered a massive, years-long search, which ultimately yielded nothing but silence. However, technological advancements in deep-sea imaging finally pinpointed an anomaly in a submerged trench adjacent to the chain's smallest, most inaccessible islet. The recovery operation was a logistical nightmare. Deep submergence recovery vessels, masked as environmental research ships, battled aggressive currents and abyssal pressures. When the debris field was eventually retrieved, it was unlike any conventional wreckage. The metallic debris recovered was not aluminum or titanium. It was an alloy of unnatural density and resilience, oddly resistant to the decades of salt corrosion. Its surface, when cleaned, possessed a matte, non-reflective sheen, and laboratory analysis struggled to categorize its isotopic signature. The technicians on the recovery platform, operating under conditions of extreme isolation, reported a constant faint smell of ozone surrounding the recovered fragments, even after prolonged exposure to the atmosphere. More concerning than the metal were the accompanying biological samples recovered from the impact site. These samples, collected from the immediate sediment layers and adhering to the structural fragments, were minute, but demonstrably non-indigenous to the region, or indeed to any known terrestrial ecology. Initial analysis showed complex, rapidly replicating cellular structures exhibiting genetic markers that proved profoundly difficult to sequence. The briefing contained photographic evidence of the samples, unsettling, translucent fibers suspended in preserving fluid, demanding immediate, rigorous quarantine procedures. The combination of the unexplained metallic debris and the unusual biological matter triggered the highest level of hazard response. The entire island chain, already remote, was immediately designated a permanent exclusion zone. This involved the clandestine deployment of naval patrols, the establishment of sophisticated, layered sensor arrays designed to track unauthorized access, and the immediate, total silencing of every individual involved in the recovery effort, from the deep-sea divers to the lead material scientists. The decision to impose the exclusion zone was not merely about containing hazardous material. It was about burying the physical evidence of advanced propulsion systems and the lingering questions raised by the biological findings. The recovery proved two truths: that revolutionary, non-fossil fuel flight technology had been achieved, and that its implementation had intersected with an unknown, unsettling biological variable, forcing the state to permanently rewrite the map of accessible territory. The fourth confidential matter documented a triumph of physics that was immediately classified as an existential threat to global socioeconomics: Project Janus. This initiative had been aimed at theoretical exploration, pushing the limits of energy generation, and it culminated in the accidental stabilization of a theoretical zero-point energy reactor. The work was conducted within a massive subterranean facility, carved deep into inert bedrock and characterized by pristine, hissing white tiling. The facility was obsessively clean, its halls silent except for the pervasive, constant sound of industrial-scale air conditioning and the rhythmic clicking of environmental sensors. The core of Project Janus was centered on manipulating quantum fluctuations to generate stable, usable energy, the harnessing of the vacuum itself. After years of incremental progress and countless failures, an accidental confluence of magnetic confinement parameters led to a moment of unexpected, profound stability. The energy containment fields, designed to handle brief, violent bursts, suddenly resonated with a deep, powerful hum. A sound so resonant, it vibrated through the facility's thick concrete floor. The calculations displayed on the main monitoring wall were instantly staggering. The power generated within the contained reaction chamber exceeded the energy requirements of the nearest metropolitan area by a factor of nearly 50. Extrapolated, the stabilization of this zero-point energy reactor instantly rendered every existing national power grid obsolete. Hydroelectric dams, nuclear fission plants, solar farms, all were relegated to technological antiquity in a single, controlled flash of stabilized quantum energy. The briefing presented the undeniable data. A source of effectively limitless, clean energy had been realized. The subsequent terrifying realization was the sheer impossibility of its introduction. The immediate and total collapse of the global energy market, the destruction of trillions in existing infrastructure investment, the catastrophic economic destabilization of every nation reliant on resource-based economies, and the instantaneous mass unemployment of millions in the energy and extraction sectors. The result would be a global catastrophe far exceeding any military conflict. The power calculations confirmed that the solution to energy scarcity was simultaneously the trigger for global societal breakdown. The ruling decision was swift and absolute: immediate, total cessation of Project Janus research. The facility was placed on permanent lockdown. Every schematics document, every piece of proprietary code, and every raw data log was meticulously copied, sealed within inert gas canisters, and prepared for deep burial. The reactor itself was dismantled, not destroyed, but rendered inert and entombed beneath hundreds of feet of high-density concrete slurry. The sensory memory of the facility, the sterile chill, the constant ventilation hiss, and the shocking realization of limitless power was sealed away. The silence of the abandoned facility became the price paid for maintaining global economic equilibrium, a deliberate decision to perpetuate current energy realities rather than risk the unknown, volatile future unleashed by true energy freedom. Finally, the fifth briefing illuminated a chilling and tragic environmental reality that had been developing beneath the surface of public awareness: the silent shift. This crisis was articulated entirely through visual data, presented as high-resolution satellite imagery that dominated the briefing room screens. The imagery, captured by highly sophisticated deep-penetration sensors, focused on the world's major coral reef systems. The colors of the images told the story of an ecosystem in collapse. Where once vibrant blues, greens, and ochres indicated thriving life and complexity, there now sprawled vast stretches of unnerving, spectral white. The bleached coral appeared like ghostly, skeletal remains beneath the turquoise surface. Silent, calcium carbonate structures that were structurally intact but biologically vacant.
Peta proyeksi mengungkap mimpi buruk. Kehilangan terumbu karang kini menjadi bencana global, terjadi serentak di ketiga samudra utama.
The accompanying data confirmed that key environmental tipping points, previously theorized and modeled for decades into the future, had not only been crossed, but had been breached several years prior to the public's current scientific understanding. The rate of oceanic absorption of atmospheric heat and carbon dioxide had accelerated catastrophically, triggering systemic failures in marine environments vital for global fisheries and coastal protection. The briefing was less about what was happening now and more about the delayed consequence that was already in motion. The strategic implications centered on the ocean's immediate, accelerating rise,
and the violent changes in storm intensity due to the thermal shift.
The briefing demanded an immediate, undisclosed overhaul of national coastal defense strategies. It was a recognition that current seawalls and existing flood defense infrastructure were already inadequate. The strategic response included immediate allocations for massive, multi-decade infrastructural relocation plans. Coastal cities previously deemed safe were quietly categorized as high risk, necessitating the silent, phased movement of critical infrastructure.
Konvoy pengangkut militer itu mulai mendaki, memasuki zona dataran tinggi yang dingin di bawah cahaya biru dini hari.
This silent shift involved extensive, undisclosed land acquisition, the secretive construction of subterranean storage facilities near higher elevations, and the fundamental alteration of the national risk matrix. No public discussion could accompany this effort, as disclosure would instantly trigger a real estate collapse in every coastal zone and incite mass panic regarding the viability of existing communities. The sensory element here was the visual impact of the ghostly coral, a silent, vast visualization of loss that confirmed the irreversible nature of the crisis. The National Strategic Plan was quietly rebuilt around the assumption of a continually rising mean sea level, forcing engineers and planners to work years ahead of the publicly acknowledged threat, permanently altering the definition of national security to include the silent, inevitable retreat from the coastlines. Taken together, these 5 classified briefings represent a hidden history, a constant, undisclosed struggle against existential threats that define the parameters of global policy. From the cold, sudden realization of extraterrestrial vigilance, the obsidian signal, to the grinding, desperate scarcity of essential terrestrial resources, global resource exigency, and the unsettling recovery of advanced wreckage intertwined with unknown biology, the unregistered flight. From the profound economic paralysis caused by limitless energy, Project Janus, to the chilling, silent environmental retreat demanded by oceanic collapse, the silent shift. These Tier 0 documents confirm that the highest levels of governance often operate in a world parallel to the one experienced by the public. A world defined by unmanageable truth, sealed away in the humidity-controlled silence of the concrete labyrinth. These are the burdens of knowledge that fundamentally shape the security state, leaving only the echo of crucial decisions that the public was never permitted to hear.